pairs, check that everything's stable, then the next pair, and you take a timing on that. The limit on the reheats is 15 minutes, and the airplane then just sort of hangs under the speed of sound for about 15-20 seconds, and then quite smoothly you go supersonic. And the only thing that tells you you've gone supersonic is the Mach meter there going from 0.99 through 1 to 1.01, and the other thing that tells you you've gone supersonic is as the pressure wave, the shock wave, attaches on the nose, that rate of climb and descent indicator there, that little orange triangle, does a sort of blip of up and down the full scale of the instrument, and then settles down. And you're then climbing and accelerating with those reheats on until you reach a Mach number of 1.7, and that happens at about 43,000 feet. And when you get to that point, you then cancel the reheats, leaving the throttles wide open, and the airplane then drifts up rather more gently, and it finally reaches Mach 2, twice the speed of sound, at 50,000 feet. And after that, you simply maintain full power on the throttles. The airplane finds its own altitude as you burn off fuel. Obviously the airplane gets lighter, so it gently drifts uphill, and typically on a flight to New York you'd reach probably about 58,000 feet on the other side of the Atlantic before you needed to throttle back and revert back to subsonic flight once more. And the deceleration process, you go through a sort of phased reduction of power. You don't just close all the throttles all in a heap, because that would bugger up the engines basically. So you bring the power back in gentle stages, and over a distance of about 110, 120 miles, that's what it takes to go from Mach 2 to Mach 1. And then once you're subsonic, you're just fitting in with all the normal air traffic. And finally, when you come into land, you do your landing checks, the gear down, then you bring the nose down fully down to the 12.5 degree position. You're flying it under auto throttle control for the power settings, and all you're doing is hand flying it, or you could do it as an auto land through the autopilot here, but I used to like hand flying it was much more fun. And you just come down, the auto throttles would keep the speed at the right speed, and as you get deep into the flow, and the height calls were 40 feet, 15 feet, and at those calls you disconnect the auto throttles, you get deep into the flare at about 15 feet, and then you just very gently bring the throttles back to flight idle. And as you do that, you get a very strong nose down trim change, so you're pulling back on the control column to keep the nose attitude at about 11.5 degrees nose up. You just keep that constant pitch attitude, and the airplane, because it's now in a very strong sort of ground cushion effect, almost lands itself, and you have main wheel touchdown. And as soon as the main wheels are touched down, you then push the control column forward to lower the nose wheel gently down onto the runway. Once the nose wheel's in contact with the runway, you keep the stick hard forward, and you then come in with the reverse thrust and the brakes, and bring the airplane to a halt on the runway.
Would you ever keep the nose up to reduce the
No,
brake?